I'd like to welcome Sergeant DeBella and Mr. Tony Roman and thank them both for taking the time today to celebrate Second Chance Month. By sharing your experience and knowledge related to the employment challenges of those formerly incarcerated, you are continuing to support those returning citizens facing unemployment after reentry into our communities. Let's start with Mr. Roman. Can you talk a bit about employment barriers you faced and overcame in your journey related to incarceration?
Yes, and thank you for having me. I do appreciate it. And I'll start off by saying I think the hardest thing in terms of the barriers, I have so many, so I'll just keep focused, is really you're not going, well, the biggest hurdle I had was finding the opportunity to find a good job that paid well. And it wasn't like at minimum wage, but I had to lower my expectations, unfortunately, and get multiple jobs to get there. The biggest thing that I did over time, and sometimes it just took several weeks or a couple months, they saw, the employers that had me on board, that I was determined, dedicated, and just wanted a second chance. So it just proving myself, and I can tell that to anyone that they have to put the best foot forward. You may not be as fortunate as just coming out and getting your dream job. Of course, you're going to have to work for it just like anybody else, but you probably have to do a little bit more as well.
Okay, excellent. I will say that folks really don't, that's an excellent point. Folks don't really realize how, what an asset someone who, as a returning citizen, could be to their organization because there are obstacles you're used to, you're accustomed to overcoming obstacles, and you worked really hard to get where you are. So I think that was a really good point. Now, Sergeant DeBella, I understand that you lead the employment initiative for returning citizens with the Spotsylvania Sheriff's Office. Why are these efforts important for our entire community, and why should our citizens care?
Yeah, that's true. And thank you for having me as well. Yeah, we found, in my experience, as well as the experience of my coworkers, we find ourselves dealing with a lot of these folks, returning citizens who have these barriers that make it difficult for them to find employment. That puts many of them in a situation where they end up having to find other alternative means that maybe aren't so legal to go about trying to make ends meet for themselves and their families. So I'd approached the sheriff with this idea that we could use the sheriff's office, great relationships with businesses in our community, to try to open up more opportunities for those with barriers. And some of the businesses I've talked to that are willing to hire those with barriers actually have found in their experience that they can be more loyal and dedicated because sometimes the work, them getting jobs can be harder to come by.
Absolutely. I'm certain there must be a level of appreciation amongst a person who has worked very hard to achieve employment and under very difficult circumstances. So, can you talk a little bit, just as a follow-up question, Sergeant DeBella, about anecdotally how you've witnessed unemployment really affect recidivism? I know you spoke to it a little bit regarding people finding alternative employment that may not be legal. What else have you witnessed in the unemployment affecting folks out there on the street?
It's when you end up on a call and you have people that are struggling, and some of them maybe even with drug addiction or something like that, and they start to share with you just the kind of situations that they've been in and the things they have to deal with and how hard it is for them to have a criminal background and not being able to get steady employment, which affects their housing, which affects their ability to take care of, and in some cases even maintain custody of their children because they can't keep steady employment to be able to do that. So the lack of steady housing and the lack of steady resources come in to being able to support their families. I can't tell you how many times that I've been with somebody in a situation where they're about to be arrested, for them to go through and be able to share their story. And it often is about not being able to find work. And then they get down on themselves and down on their situation and kind of lose hope and in all aspects of their life, not even just looking. We have a bad mental health crisis in our community as it is, and when people have a hard time finding work to be able to support themselves and their families and provide for their families, and they can resort back to old ways.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. Mr. Roman, what would you say to an employer to ease their minds regarding hiring a formerly incarcerated person?
I think you have to be first and foremost honest. Tell them about the situation. The worst thing you can do is lie about it or try to hide it. It is all going to come out eventually, one way or another. So if you're honest and forward about it, and telling them, and yes, you got to be honest and say, this is who I was and this is what I did, whatever the case was. And then tell them what you're doing now, who you are today, what you're striving for. Could be, in my case, to take care of my family, reestablish myself, help the community. Definitely had a spirit and have a spirit to help people coming out in the same situation, helping the families, because there's no worse feeling, I'm sure for a woman as well, but for a man to come out and not be able to provide or help a struggling family. So to me, I think the best thing you can do is be honest, one, and also tell them how determined you are to do whatever the case may be. If it's digging ditches or working on computers or whatever the case is, that you're determined to be the best hire that person has ever done. And I've said that, said, I want to be one of your best choices that you've ever made, because I am willing to do what it takes to go to the next step. And what Sergeant said earlier is dead on. Some people, if they don't get the opportunity, eventually they get down on themselves. They say, why bother? So I'm just going to do what I got to do to make ends meet, to get mine, put food in your stomach. So it can be a horrible downward spiral, free fall, if you will, if it doesn't go your way, or you just get some kind of helping hand. And that's what I would say, is just to hang in there, be honest, and whatever you do, no matter what, in terms of you break the law, it's just going to compound things 100 times worse. So you can't go that route.
Well, Mr. Roman, you spoke to help and giving help. And I'm sort of curious, who helped you along the way?
Well, I was blessed, and I prepared myself before I was released with people from churches and FAILSAFE and Christian Brothers transition program. And that's how I started seeing how things can be changed from the inside and not have to wait till you get right out the door, if you will. So I have like Juanita Shanks, Chaplain Jack Richards were huge in mentoring to me, giving me opportunities, being references, because sometimes that's a key thing. And that's how I started for myself, and was able to start a business, ultimately got better jobs, and now in a position to be able to help others in terms of having giving first-time employment to people.
That's wonderful. That is fantastic. Um, Sergeant DeBella, what do you see as being the trend within criminal justice reform? There seems to be quite a bit of energy around that right now, especially. Where do you see all of that heading countrywide?
I don't know that I necessarily can speak on the national level. In a lot of these conversations, I'm not comfortable speaking for a lot of folks that we don't know. But I can tell you is that here in Spotsylvania, we have a sheriff and a sheriff's office that's committed for doing what's the best for our community. And many of these folks, they are our citizens. They were our citizens before they got in trouble, and many find themselves back to be citizens of Spotsylvania after. And we care about them. We don't want to have to continue responding to the same calls and the same situation, the same spiral like Tony talked about. We want to see people doing better, getting better jobs, getting on their feet. We're not going back out there every day. So I can tell in Spotsylvania, we're adamant that we want to do the best to help our community. And again, like we talked about families, it's not just the formerly incarcerated person that benefits from these. It's their families, it's their kids, from them being able to support their families. So that's the direction that we're going, and we're fully committed to it. On the national stage, It does seem to be becoming a bigger thing in certain places. I just don't know if I can speak nationally as a whole, but I'm excited for what we're doing here in Spotsylvania.
Sure. No, that's fair. And thank you for responding. Mr. Roman, what unexpected wins did you realize through this whole process? So maybe unexpected help or growth, something you learned about yourself?
I can say that I was not always a patient person. That was definitely not my strong suit. But being humbled through the process and just been having to be turned down from multiple different jobs, opportunities, or even schooling, it just made me appreciate any little break that I could get and build off of that. So I started to, as they say, enjoy the small victories along the way. I wasn't waiting for a big one anymore, if you will. And they started to pile in slowly but surely. But here recently, it's just getting a very good job that I just didn't expect, just because finally some people knew that I could do things, and I was referred, and I wasn't expecting it. At one point, I said, it's just not going to happen. And it just goes to show you being patient, doing the right things, and not hurrying the process, because it just wasn't that time, I guess. But now, very spiritual man I am right now, and I just believe in the process of doing things right, and more importantly, just showing other people that it can be done. It's not easy, but yes, you can restore yourself, restore your family, and be a productive part of your community. Like the sergeant just said, that means a lot. Yes, you may have made a mistake, but being able to come back out and doing what's you're supposed to be doing, and preparing yourself to help not only yourself but your family and the community is a huge part. Everybody wants to be a part of something good, and I think that is the opportunity that what the sergeant is saying, Spotsylvania is providing, and hopefully other jurisdictions will take heed to, because that does make a difference for the person that's coming out, and especially the family. The children will definitely benefit from that.
Well, that's fantastic. And I will leave you with the last question and the last thought, Mr. Roman. So, and you talked about this a little bit, but what's one piece of advice that you would provide for someone who's earlier in this same journey? What would you, or almost a note to your younger self, what would you tell someone? How would you tell them to handle the journey?
I don't think we got that kind of time right now. I'm just joking, but I can say this. I think investing in yourself in all facets, your mind, your body, your spirit, learning things that, and some people aren't readers or things of that nature, but learn what you can learn about your dream. If I've told people now, I said, look, if you want to be whatever, disc jockey, or that, now I'm dating myself, no one wants to do that anymore, but anything in entertainment or scientific or anything, you can do so much online and start doing research. What can you do? Invest, like I said, in yourself a little bit in that aspect, and see what you can do. Don't waste your time just dreaming. You got to put your dreams in motion. If you're just wishing for something, it's not going to happen. You got to definitely be determined. You look for an avenue of how you can get there. And it may not happen overnight, like I mentioned, but you got to put the effort, and people see that. Eventually you're going to get a break. Someone's going to see it and reach out. Employers nowadays, like Sergeant said, are very, when they see someone that wants to do things, that is eager to go up and above, because some people don't take things for granted anymore. So you know what? Every chance I get, I'm going to make the most of it. And then employers are going to see that. People that in a position that can help are going to see that, and that's how things come to you, I guess is what I'm saying. So in short, and I'll close with this, is just investing in yourself, being honest, being humble, and being grateful for everything that comes your way, no matter how small, but you celebrate the small victories along the way. I think that it definitely will help you.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was perfect. And definitely words of wisdom that I think we all could use, actually. So in wrapping up, thank you so much again for sharing your story, Mr. Roman, and thank you, Sergeant DeBella, for taking the time to talk about why employment is so important for not just our returning citizens, but for our entire community.
You're welcome. Glad we could be there.